I know everybody listening or watching this podcast wants to be successful. There are no doubts about that. I have absolutely no doubt that everybody watching wants to be successful. But sometimes in that pursuit of success, do we forget to live and focus on the things that will allow us to live a prosperous and satisfying life? Today, we're going to look at several ways that you can learn to be more satisfied in your life, not sacrificing your success or your goals, but actually just living a more satisfying life. I think you're going to enjoy this episode, so stick around.
You're listening to the Steve Freeman Podcast, the real, raw truth about the pursuit of success in music, business, and life. Here's your host, hit songwriter, multi-platinum selling producer, and serial entrepreneur, Steve Freeman.
I think all of us from time to time get caught up in the pursuit of our goals, in the pursuit of our dreams. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I do it just as much as you guys do. I get caught up. Very rarely do I find myself actually living in the moment. And if I have, probably one of my huge downfalls, personally and professionally, is just that, is that I often find myself, I'm not present in the moment. I'm constantly trying to achieve the next level or get to the next thing or reach the top of that next mountain. And today's topic, as I talk about it, I'm talking as much to me as I am to you guys. But I really wanted to talk with you about a simple question. And that question is, am I really satisfied with my life? And I want you to ask yourself that question. Are you really satisfied? Because time is short. You know, I mean, I get reminded of that all the time, whether it's friends that pass away, or we all watch the news or social media when we see an actor or a musician that has passed way too soon. And even what we're going through with COVID and everything else, it makes people nervous and unsure and unsettled. I think it's important that we ask ourselves this question. Am I really satisfied with my life? Now, there are different levels of being satisfied. I think when you look around, it's like with me and personally, when I think about the life that I live right now, I cannot say that I am unsatisfied. I mean, I look, my children are healthy. I'm healthy. My wife is healthy. The rest of my family is healthy. And for most of us, we look over those things. We don't think about those things as much because we're so focused most of the time professionally and on our personal goals that we're trying to reach or that we're trying to achieve, that often we take for granted the little things that make up basically our everyday life. And that is the people that immediately surround you. Health, you heard in one of the previous episodes, me talking to Frank Stallone. And I point blank asked Frank, I said, you know, looking back over all of your accomplishments, what are you most proud of? What's most valuable to you? And Frank said health. I mean, I was fully expecting him to talk about Golden Globes and Grammys and hit records and big movies. No, it was health. He was most grateful for his health. So I want to talk about a couple of different ways that we can do this, that we can not stop trying to achieve our goals, not trying to stop being successful in the pursuit of that. But maybe a little more focus on us, a little more focus on our person, a little more focus on the day-to-day. Because let's face it, guys, I will tell you personally, and I may have said this before, and if I have, then forgive me, but I'm going to say it again. Every time in my life, I have set a major goal out in front of me, and I've achieved it. I realized that was not the end of that road. Then I just put another waypoint way out there in front to give me something else to work towards. I think before when I said it's almost like a mountaintop, you think like in the music business and what I've done for 30 years is I always looked up there and I saw the top of this mountain. And I was convinced that when I got to the top of that mountain, that was me achieving my goal. That was the end destination, was the top of that mountain. And I worked and I persevered and I was consistent and I sacrificed. Everybody around me sacrificed. My wife sacrificed. My kids sacrificed. My parents sacrificed. My friends, everybody sacrificed so that I could reach the top of that mountain. But when I got to the top of that mountain, I just saw the peak of another mountain that I couldn't see while I was climbing the mountain that I was currently on. So listen, you're not, even though when you think in your mind, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What are you trying to achieve? If and when you achieve them, you're just going to set another set of goals, another dream that you're trying to accomplish. We're that way as humans, right? If you really think about it. And again, I'll put this on me. Forever and ever, I remember I wanted a Corvette. And so I got to the point in my career where I went and bought a Corvette. Well, then the Corvette wasn't enough. Then I really wanted a Porsche. So I got a Porsche. And then it was like, man, I really want a Shelby GT500. So I went and got a Shelby GT500. And then it was like, man, I got to have one of those ZR1 Camaros. So I went and bought the ZR1 Camaro. Then it's, man, I want a Ford F-250. I need a truck. I don't have a truck. And then one day I walked outside and I had 9 cars. And there's only 7 days a week, so you can only drive one per day. And it's ridiculous to just go drive different cars all day. I did the same thing with studio equipment. Man, I really want to have this microphone. And I want that microphone. I want this mic pre. I want this computer. Then I got all of that, full recording studio. Then it's like, man, I really got into cinematography. So I got to have this camera. Oh, now this new camera came. It is constantly going to be something else. If somewhere in your mind, you have convinced yourself that the current set of goals that you have are the end, you are sadly mistaken. They are temporary. They only last as long as it takes for you to get there. Then you're going to, as a creative or as a driven person, you're going to want to accomplish more. You're going to want to go on. You're going to want to, now it's this and now it's that. I promise you. So maybe there is some validity to saying, okay, look, yes, those are my immediate goals. Those are not the final goals. Those are not the final destination. But knowing that, why don't I stop and smell the roses a little bit? Knowing that if I'm putting everything into reaching this destination that I've set out there in front of me right now, if I know now that that's not the end of the road, if I know now that when I achieve those goals and I reach that destination, that's not the end, you're not prohibiting yourself or being negative on yourself if you go, you know what, maybe I'll take a little bit more time to get there. Maybe I'll stop and smell the roses a little bit along the way. Maybe I'll enjoy the journey a little bit more. And it's because we do that, I think that if we're honest with ourselves, if you really ask, am I satisfied with my life? I'm not talking about are you the only satisfaction rule being if you've achieved your goals or not. That cannot be the litmus test of whether or not you're satisfied because, like I said, you're never going to ultimately get there. There's always going to be somebody else. So the answer to that question is no. You are not satisfied because you are constantly in process of trying to reach that next goal, of trying to accomplish that next thing. Let's focus on trying to be satisfied right now. There's nothing wrong with, it's not complacent to be able to look around and go, I'm not all the way to my destination yet, but I'm going to enjoy this journey. There is no rule. There's nothing out there that says you aren't allowed to enjoy the journey of this trip. Nothing whatsoever. And guys, like I said, I am probably 1,000% more guilty of this than you guys are. So I'm preaching to myself. I'm not reaching through this camera, through this microphone and trying to shake you and get you into fucking shape. I'm getting myself into shape just as much as humanly possible. I want to be able to enjoy. Look, guys, and it hit me really hard. And I fought everything that I could possibly do, not just to break down into tears. But I realized my daughter a couple of weeks ago turned 17 years old. One more year and she's off to college and she's off for the rest of her life. What made me sad was not the fact that she's at that point in her life. What made me sad is that I wasn't present for more of the 17 years up to this point. And those are times, those are years, those are conversations that I will never get the chance to have back. I'll never get them back. That is part of the cost of not taking each moment and realizing that it's okay to achieve the goals. It's okay to try to get there as fast as humanly possible. But if it comes at the expense of having a satisfied life on a day-to-day basis, it's not worth it. It's not. So I want to go over some ways with you that I think are very important. And there's just 7 of them. But one is focus on the positive. Look, it's easy for everybody to get caught up in the negative, especially right now. You can't turn on the news. You can't get on social media. Everybody's fucking fighting back and forth. You're right. You're wrong. I'm right. You're wrong. White, black, red, blue. It's Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. Police lives. It's a fight. It's negativity. You've got to focus on the positive. And again, I'm just as guilty. This starts every day when you wake up every morning. When you open your eyes first thing in the morning, your first thought should be, it's not, and I'm not saying this literally, but do you realize when you wake up, you open your eyes, you make that first conscious breath of being awake, you're alive. And if you have a hard time thinking of anything positive, because I know me, if you just came up to me on the street and you ask me, find some positive, find the positive. First thing you do when you wake up in the morning, find the positive. My immediate thing jumps to, what have I got to do today? Am I doing a podcast episode today? Am I in the studio today? Am I traveling today? Am I going to be able to? That's where I jump to and I know that's where you jump to first as well, but it shouldn't be. It should start with, we're breathing. We're alive. That's a pretty damn good positive place to start your day, is just realizing that you are actually alive. A lot of people aren't. And a lot of people don't have tomorrow. So I think that's a positive place to start. If you're struggling right now, whether it's career, whether it's personally, if you're struggling, you're having a hard time, if it's a mental health issue, start with, I opened my eyes this morning and I took a breath. That, folks, is positive. It's all downhill from there. And whatever happens between this morning and tomorrow morning, when you wake up tomorrow morning and your eyes open and you take that first breath, again, positive. Whatever happens between those two is really irrelevant, and it doesn't really matter, because none of it matters if you don't wake up, open your eyes, and take that first breath. None of it matters. Whether or not you achieved your goal, whether or not you got this person to do this or this person to pay you to do this, none of that matters. Did I get my song on the radio? Did I sell this house? Did we have more customers? None of it matters if you didn't first open your eyes and be able to take a breath. I know a lot of you, when you look around, because of the times that we're in right now, it is very difficult to find positivity, but it's there. You have to look extra hard for it. There are many forces at work to keep you from focusing on the positive. There's too much negative out there. If you have to, take a break from social media. I don't watch the news anymore, like at all. I can't. I don't want to. It's too fucking negative. It gets me in a very bad mood. And when one thing gets you in a bad mood, it's like a very slippery slope. The minute that one negative thought creeps in, you're gone. You're done for. So focus on the positive. Number 2, I want to talk and this is extremely important. Very, very, very important. Find your stress relief. I don't care what that is. I don't care if it's setting everything aside and listening to this podcast, which I've had some of you tell me that you use my podcast as a stress reliever. Is it my voice? Does my voice soothe you? And does it make you want to, I hope it doesn't make you want to fall asleep, but find a stress relief. That could be many things. It could be reading a book. For me, I love video games and movies. When I want to just completely zone out, and that's my stress relief, is zoning out. I've got to get myself in a position where It's almost like putting blinders on a horse. The only thing I can see is right in front of me. So I get lost in playing Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever the latest game is, or turning on old episodes of The Sopranos or Entourage or one of my favorite shows, The West Wing. I bet I've watched the entire West Wing series 30 times. But you've got to find something. Maybe it's getting in your car and just driving around, turning on the radio, listening to music. Step away from your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations to be able to find some way in your life to relieve the stress. And it's got to be something that you do every day. Because, I mean, doctors agree, stress is not good. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your lungs. It's not good for your body. So every day you've got to find a way. I don't know if that's at the end of the day, but I'm trying to do that now. And more so at the end of the day is try to, whether it's just zone out watching TV or playing video games or doing something, watching YouTube. I love I can get lost on YouTube. Maybe social media is a stress reliever for you. Do you get on TikTok and flip for hours and hours and hours and hours? And if that takes your brain off of the things that keep you stressed out, then there's nothing wrong with that. Some of you go work out. Some of you go to the gym. Some of you get on the treadmill. Some of you go ride bikes. Some of you go to a gym and go swimming. Whatever it is, you've got to find that thing that soothes you, that takes you out of your normal. Because I can promise if you can do these first two steps, if you can focus on the positive, find the positive, and then you can find some sort of stress reliever that allows you to alleviate a lot of the stress that just keeps your mind clogged. Because listen, if you can here's the thing I find here's how I know that I have effectively relieved stress. I get creative. I get ideas. It's almost like a funnel. When I get in an ultra creative mode, my funnel starts to fill up. Now, if you are familiar with how a funnel works, a lot goes in the top. It gets stuffed in the top, and then slowly but surely it drips out the bottom. When I get creative, that's what happens. My brain turns into a funnel, and I'm able to wipe away all the cloudiness out there that is keeping me distracted, whether it's trying to achieve this goal or get to this many listeners on the podcast or get this song in this movie or this song in this TV show or help this actor get this role in this film. When all of that, I can part those clouds, almost like parting the Red Sea. Then my mind starts to work like a funnel, and that's when I can be creative. My best ideas come in the middle of me sitting down just watching a TV show. And a lot of times I find that I get lost in the show or the game I'm playing. I'm not even really paying attention because at that point, I do honestly believe there is a different frequency that we tap into. I used to write with a friend of mine a long time ago, and he called it the God frequency. And it was, there's just some bandwidth up there when you can clear your mind and your mind is at rest, that you can tap into this quote unquote God frequency, where it allows creative thoughts that can't fit through all of the mud and the cloudiness of your brain. It clears that out of the way so that it can get through. So finding some sort of stress relief is absolutely essential. I can tell you this, you're never going to achieve your goals and your dreams or your aspirations or get to the top of the next mountain you're trying to climb if you can't find the positive and if you are stressed out all of the time. Because you're not productive when you're stressed. Your body and your mind is occupied. You need to wipe all of that out of the way, and you need to try to find a way to do this every day. Along with like the stress relief, finding that stress relief for you. You also need to take time for yourself. And I know for some of you, this is very difficult. I know some of you, and I've dealt with this in my own family, in my own life. My wife and I have talked about this at length. And, she's even said before that she feels guilty when she takes time for herself, that, we've got the kids, we've got the life, we've got the dog, we've got all of these other things that require our attention constantly. And she has said in the past that she feels guilty when she takes time for herself, but it is absolutely 100% a necessity. I, on the other hand, have no problems taking time for myself. I probably take way too much time for myself but you get overwhelmed, right? You get absolutely overwhelmed with the day-to-day. And I know for me, I always feel like I'm doing something for somebody else, even if it's in the pursuit of something that will ultimately benefit me. I feel like I am constant. This person wants this from me. This person wants this from me. All the messages and direct messages I get because I put it on myself. I'm like, I've got to respond to these people right now. And I love that. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But at some point, whether it's an hour a day or 30 minutes a day, God forbid, even 10 minutes, you've got to find some time for yourself. You've got to find some time to be able to step away from all of that and take a few minutes for yourself. Because this is all about your mental health. And that's a big topic these days. Everybody's talking about mental health, mental health, mental health. I think that if we focused on the positive, if we had some stress relievers and we started taking some time for ourselves, I think our mental health would be a lot better. I don't know anybody that listening or watching that couldn't agree with that. Maybe that's the basis. Maybe that's the start. That is rule number one of having better mental health. Instead of focusing on everybody else all the time, if you just had a little time every day to focus on yourself. Another point in this, point 4, is taking responsibility for your actions. Stop blaming others for where you're at. We had an extremely popular episode a couple of weeks back called How to Identify Toxic People. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to this episode, I highly recommend that you do go back and listen to this episode. I couldn't believe the direct messages. And guys, I was getting, and those of you that are listening that did this, I just want to say bravo to you and applause to you, because I don't know that I would have ever been a big enough person to do this. But I actually had people emailing me and messaging me saying that after listening to the episode, they realized that they had been the toxic person in somebody else's life. And they were messaging me saying, thank you for this, because now I'm going to reach out to this person and basically admit that I have been that toxic person. And I don't want to be that toxic person to people anymore. That's powerful. That is taking responsibility for your own actions. We have the opportunity in the day-to-day life that we live to interact and have those interactions with people all day long. How are you approaching those different situations? Are you taking responsibility for your own actions? Do you tend to find yourself blaming other people for the way that you are? Let me ask you this. Do you blame other people, which keeps you from finding the positivity in your life? Do you blame other people, which then stresses you out? Are you busy blaming other people for the time that you don't have to take for yourself? You see what I'm saying here? I mean, it's pretty simple. Take responsibility for your actions. Number 5 is something that I have a very hard time with, and that is being more understanding. One of the biggest stressors for most individuals comes from misunderstanding and developing the ability to see from another person's perspective without bias. It's hard to do. We all have this thing in our mind that we think and we're convinced that we know exactly the way things are. I mean, look at social media with everything that's going on in this with COVID. I've seen people and friends on Facebook, the way that they talk, you'd swear to God they have a PhD. And they went to medical school. They've got an MD, PhD. They're got a master's in psychology. Meanwhile, they work at Home Depot. We've got to be more understanding of one another. And that means being open to multiple point of views. That means having an open mind. That just because somebody thinks differently, acts differently, or believes something differently than we do. Because here's the thing you got to understand. When you're not a very understanding person, you are taking all of what you think is wrong with everybody else and placing that on yourself. Do you realize you're not placing that on them? You're not making your disbelief in them or your misunderstanding of them and placing that on their shoulders. That's a burden you're picking up and putting on yours, which keeps you stressed out, which keeps you worried, which means you're not taking time for yourself. And when you do, you're taking that time to focus on what's wrong with all these other people and blaming all these other people. Meanwhile, just making it another big problem for you. Be more understanding. And I think a big part of this too is learning to let the fuck go. I do this horribly. I grip things so tight when I've got something in my mind and I've got a goal that I'm trying to achieve. I hold on to it and I grip it I almost grip the life out of it. And at that point, I can't tell you the number of times in my own life when I've actually achieved the goal that I was trying to achieve, but I had literally squeezed the life of it during the journey and it wasn't worth having when I achieved it. That's 100% honesty. Be more understanding. Number 6 is kind of going back to the toxic people. You need to reevaluate your relationships. And this is all, and I can get in trouble probably for this one, but this is all relationships. Because all relationships require work. Marriage, hardest job ever. It's not easy. Your friends, your spouse, your family. I'll be real honest with you, about, maybe 8-9 years ago, I made the conscious decision to, alienate's a fine word, but basically cut out members of my family that I don't talk to, that I don't have anything to do with, because they add nothing to my life but problems. And it's hard to do that. I know nobody wants to cut members of their family out or cut them off. And I didn't make it a very hey, fuck you, I'm done. It wasn't like that. I just stopped responding. I didn't return phone calls. And by doing that, I made it very clear that I don't feel like you're adding value to my life. And there's two very detrimental things that people can do and impact you negatively in your life or your business. And that is, one, if they don't add value, then they are of a negative value. And a lot of people don't. I've said that before and I took some flack for it, and a lot of people don't like it. But look, it's the truth. I sit here, I'm almost 44 years old. I don't have time for people that don't add value to my life in some way, form, or fashion. Now, that doesn't mean people that aren't paying me or that don't advance me to where I want to. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that don't help you achieve one of these other steps we're talking about. Do they help relieve stress from you? Do they encourage you to take time for yourself? Are they more understanding of you? All of these different things. If these people in your life and the relationships that you have in your life, if they are not bearing fruit, then you don't need to have them. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like having a refrigerator in your house that doesn't work, but yet you keep putting Cokes and milk and everything in there and, just hoping one day maybe you'll reach in there and that Coke's going to be cold. It's the same thing. You would never do that. You would never in a million years do that. You've got to approach your relationships that way. And if you're out there and you're listening, you just like the toxic people episode, I know that right now, those of you that are watching or listening are picturing faces of people, because I am, that don't add value to your life. And that value does not always, like I said, have to come with some sort of financial dollar amount. I'm not saying, if people aren't paying you, then, kick them to the curb. That's not, I'm talking about you. I'm not even necessarily talking about your business, because the truth is that your business will never be successful if you aren't successful personally first. That's just the God's honest truth. And more times than not, there are two things that I see that keep people from being successful. And this is just how it is. You can like that I'm going to say this. You can not like it, but it is the way that it is. There are two things most of the time that I see that keep people from success. Finances and other people. Two things. If you can get the other people right, most of the time, when you get the people thing right, it leads to the finances. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's a rule of the evolution of the world that we're not allowed to see, but it is that way. Make sure the people in your life are adding value to your life in some way, form, or fashion. And if they aren't, there's no need for them to be in your life whatsoever. They're just taking up space. They're probably taking up that time that you should be taking for yourself. And maybe that's the trade-off. Maybe the trade-off is I'm not going to spend as much time with this person. I'm going to allocate that time for myself. So reevaluate your relationships. If they aren't adding value to your life, get rid of them. Get them out of your life and replace that with something that is valuable. Because people that are just there, that aren't adding value, are just as bad as toxic people. That's a bold statement if you really think about it. But I know in my life, I don't have time or room for seat fillers. I need people sitting in those seats that want to be there and that want to add something and add value to my life. And hopefully in return, I add value to their life, because this is a two-way street. Because the one thing you got to think about, and it's uncomfortable to think about, is there are people out there right now that are listening or watching this podcast, and you are thinking of somebody in your life that isn't adding value. Meanwhile, that other person is sitting there thinking about you and that you don't add value to their life. It's happening right now. So as much as you want people to add value to your life, you need to be adding value to their life as well. Maybe these are some things you should think about when you start taking more time for yourself is, okay, is this person X, Y, and Z, are they adding value to my life? Well, then the flip side of that coin is, okay, well, am I adding value to their life? Maybe they're not adding value to yours because you're not adding value to theirs. Relationships, two-way street, 50-50, but actually more like 100-100. So as you reevaluate your relationships, make sure that you're holding up your end of the bargain with the people that you have relationships with. Because look, personally and professionally, I have been through that for many years where I felt that I was giving way more than I was getting. And that gets old. That gets very, very old. It is emotionally draining. Those are the people when you see them, that their name comes up on your phone, whether they've texted you or emailed you or called you. It's like, fuck. If you've got one of those, get them out of your life. Because that's the last thing that you need. If you have, when you see that person's name come across your phone and you don't have anything but a positive response, get them out of your life. Because they're not adding value. And most likely they're draining you of what you do have. So I know it's hard, but get rid of them. Number 7, live your best life. Now, and I'm not joking either. This is a hashtag, living my best life. I'm not talking about the best life that people post on social media that is completely unrealistic. I'm not talking, there's a guy on YouTube that I follow. I don't follow him. I do not subscribe to his channel. I think he's bullshit, has absolutely no reason to have the following that he has because he has absolutely no success to back his advice on. However, what this motherfucker does is he goes out frequently and he rents supercars like Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and shit like that. And he'll rent them for a day and he takes his cameras out and he takes pictures with these cars, and then he posts them on social media. Because what he's trying to do is trying to make you think that that's the life that he lives. And if you buy his program and you listen to him and you watch his YouTube videos, that you too could live like this. Because that's a big thing in the music industry. Most everybody wants to succeed so that they can live this certain lifestyle, not just so they can have the success. They want the lifestyle that comes along with it. That's not living the best life I'm talking about. That is living a fake best life. That's living a perceptual best life. Stop focusing on the perception of what other people think and who you want other people to think you are. Let them see who you really are. Because I can promise you, most of you are more interesting and likable people as you are, way so much more than the people that you want to be or the person that you want other people to think you already are. Perception is a huge problem. And I think perception a lot of times keeps us from living our best life because we're not living our life. We're trying to live a life we don't have yet. Again, guilty as charged. You can go back over my Instagram feed over the last 2 to 3 years and see how much I've changed. Because now listen here. And this is cocky and this is arrogant, but that's just who the fuck I am. This guy goes and rents supercars. I fucking own them, okay? So I don't need to go rent a supercar to take a picture in front of, to post it. I fucking own them. Okay, I don't have to go rent a Airbnb big fucking house and I had one. I had all of those things. They didn't make me near as happy as I thought. So why in the world would I want to portray that out to the world whenever I know achieving those things is not ultimately what makes me happy? And I know it's not going to make you happy either. Live your best life. And only you know what that means, what the definition of that means. Don't worry about what you think I think the definition of that means. Don't worry or think about, well, if I post this, all these people are going to think I'm cool and I've got this. Don't worry about what we think. Most of us spend way too much time and giving way too much credence to what other people think about us. And when we do that, it leads us to not fulfilling any of these other steps we've talked about, in all honesty. The stress of trying to keep up with perception is probably one of the most detrimental things we can bring on ourselves. Because on one hand, you've got the stress of actually trying to bring that to fruition. You've got the stress of actually trying to become that successful because that's your goal. That's enough stress on its own. And then when you've not achieved that yet, but you want other people to think you are, because God forbid, everybody that looks at you doesn't think you're the most successful person that ever walked the face of the planet, then you've got the stress of keeping up with the perception to make people think that you are somewhere that you aren't. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of stress. How in the world can you find a stress reliever among all of that? How in the world can you take time for yourself when you're busy trying to keep up with everybody else? How can you be more understanding of other people when you don't even fucking understand yourself? How do you expect other people to get to know you when you don't even know who you are? And there are so many of you out there that are listening and so many other people out there that aren't listening, but there are so many of you out there that are so worried about making people believe that your perception is your reality, that is what's holding you back. And then you ultimately get tired and you ultimately give up. Why? Because you've been living this perceptual lifestyle and other people think because of what you've posted and what you say that you've already achieved it. So why do they want to buy into you? Where's the growth? Where does it go from here? I'm fully expecting this idiot that I was talking about. Right now, it's the houses and it's the supercars. At any day, I'm expecting for him to have a selfie with a Gulfstream, knowing full well that he doesn't even fucking own the car in the picture that he drove to get to the airport. And he certainly doesn't own the Gulfstream. Can you imagine how much pressure and stress that guy keeps and is constantly under to try to get people to believe that he's something that he's not? When in all honesty, he's probably a great guy and he means well and he has every good intention. But instead of selling himself and selling his good intentions and just being honest with people about who he is and where he is in his life, he feels like he has to live this alternate universe, live this alternate version of himself that is more successful because for some reason, he thinks you might find that more valuable. Now, the other side of that coin is we as a people have to stop buying into that shit. We have to stop treating people as if their real world and real life value is determined upon what they have or the quote unquote living their best life photo they just posted. Is somebody more believable because they drive a McLaren? Is somebody more believable if they live in a 40,000 square foot mansion in Beverly Hills? Because when you get to that level in business, I'm going to level this out with you real quick. I wouldn't even plan on talking about this, but we're going to talk about it because I think it pertains. When you see all of these people, let's take Grant Cardone, for example. All that shit Grant Cardone has, he talks about his fucking airplanes and his cars. It is all other people's money. It's not his money. All of these people that live this huge lifestyle on social media, 80% of them it's not the money they've made. It's not the life they've made for themselves. They have business partners and investors that put millions of dollars into their companies, and then they use that money to live this lifestyle because we've all allowed them to believe that it's that lifestyle we're all seeking. So therefore, we will listen, buy, do whatever they tell us that we need to do because we too want to live that lifestyle. That is not that is a lifestyle that they are renting. They are leasing. They are making payments on that perception. Which, like I said, is a huge other stress in and of itself. It's okay to be you. Live your best life, but only you are the one that knows what the definition of that is. You need to walk your own path and be free from judgment. Try to get as best you can to a place where you don't care what other people think. It's such a freeing place to be. I can't say that I'm 100% there yet because, quite honestly, what I do for a living depends largely upon whether people like it or not. Whether it's the songs I write, records I produce, or this podcast or the agency. I mean, it depends on people liking it. But I don't have to live my life there. I can be okay with not everybody liking it. I can do my best. That's all I can do. I can write the best song that I can write. I can do the best podcast that I can do. There's only so much that I can do myself. And at the end of it, I hope that it's good enough for you. I hope that you like it. But where I've gotten in my life is I'm not going to live my life based on the fact of whether or not you like it or not. Why? Because it's not healthy for me. And if you get anything out of this podcast today, I think that's the point. Focus a little bit more on yourself. Get yourself to a point where you can answer that question. Am I satisfied with my life? And the answer to that question is yes. I'm talking about your life. I'm not talking about your business. I'm not talking about whether or not you've obtained or achieved your goals. That's not what I'm talking about because those will change. Those will shift. Those will move. Those of you 20-somethings that are listening out there, there's a lot of you. I looked at the analytics the other day. For those of you that are out there 21, 22, anywhere in your 20s, even your 30s, mid-30s, guys, the things that you want right now are not going to be the things you want 10 years from now. The goals that you have right now, whether you achieve them or not, are not going to be the goals that you have 10, 15 years from now. Sitting here at almost 44, the goals I have right now will not be the same goals I have at 54 or 64 or 74. God willing, I live that long. Am I satisfied with my life? Get to where the answer to that question is yes. To do that, 7 simple things. Focus on the positive. Find a stress reliever. Don't be afraid to take time for yourself. Take responsibility for your actions and be more understanding. Reevaluate your friendships and live your best life. That really should say, live your best real life. Don't worry about perception. The only person that it really matters to is you. Live your best life, guys. Thank you guys for listening, watching another episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. If I'm saying, and I'm arrogant, I'm an arrogant son of a bitch, but this last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, have been really fucking on point with the podcast, as far as I think. That's what I think anyway. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I'm enjoying doing it. We've got some huge shows coming up, some really big interviews that you guys are really going to dig. I think you're really going to enjoy some of the stuff that's coming up. Don't forget, if you're listening on Apple Podcast or iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and leave a written review, please. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like it, leave a comment. If you're watching on Facebook, like the video, leave a comment. Engage with us. Join the new Inner Circle Facebook group, private Facebook group. Go to facebook.com/The Steve Freeman and join the group. A lot of interesting conversation going to be going on over there. So go join the group as well. If you'd like to be a part of my Inner Circle, get on my email list where occasionally you'll get tips, tricks, and advice from me delivered straight to your email inbox. Go to thestevefreeman.com and sign up right there. Also, new podcast merch, it's still up. Check out this coffee cup. I mean, is that not freaking awesome? I mean, it's got our logo. Is that going to focus or not? Those of you listening to the audio version is like, what the fuck is he talking about? Look at that. That's awesome. I love it. I made this about 4 hours ago, and it's one of those things like a Yeti. Don't sue me. But it keeps it hot, or cold all day long, regardless. Love it. And it's the perfect travel size. Fits in all the cars, different little. It's great. Go check it out. Hats, too. I'm wearing the camouflage hat today. Freaking love it. It's a New Era hat, which are my favorite brand of hats. Has a little podcast. Oh, it's over here. Podcast logo over there. T-shirts, tanks, hats, coffee mugs. It's all over there. Go check it out. Guys, until next time, keep being creative, keep pressing the boundaries, and there is nothing wrong with being independent. Nothing wrong with living a satisfied life either, and that's my hope for you. See you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining us for the Steve Freeman Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow Steve on social media at The Steve Freeman.